Is here today. Robert, he is here from SBA. He was originally for years with SBDC in Brooklyn, and now he's with SBA directly. So you guys have a direct source to asking all the questions that you have for your small business loans, concerns, and inquiries. Then I have an amazing lawyer from Miami that I work with, and her name is Romy. And Romy is an international immigration lawyer. She's a business lawyer and a real estate lawyer as well. And I know that we have a lot of people here that are lawyers, that are from real estate. So that's going to be great for you guys to have her as a bonus. So with that said, I'm going to go open it up to Robert to introduce himself.
Well, good evening, everyone. Kudos to all of you for joining us today. I tell you what, Roxana is an amazing person, a wonderful entrepreneur, and what a great leader and visionary. So coming up with the idea to get us all together, looking at her screen here, I realized for the first time, you really can't talk about funds without having fun. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun today. As Roxana had mentioned, I started with a small business development center in Brooklyn, and part of my presentation tonight, if you will, or at least part of my discussion will be you acquainting yourselves with the small business development centers near you. But the SBA is all about helping the entrepreneur for-profit space across the country. We just had a new administrator appointed by the president not too long ago, Jovita Carranza, and she's an amazing lady. And really, what the SBA does is promote the best interest, helping small businesses start, grow, and expand, and recover during emergencies, disasters, which is kind of a lot what we'll be talking about tonight. So I'll leave it at that for right now, and I'll let Roxana keep on moving down the road here.
Thank you so much, Robert. Romy, let's introduce you.
Hi everybody. Roxana, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Romy Jurado. I'm an attorney. I'm originally from Peru, but my office is based in Miami. My passion is entrepreneurship and cats. So I get to do what I like every day. Right now, what's going on with the economy and this pandemic, it's really sad to see so many small business owners that have helped build their business throughout the years really struggle. So the reason why I wanted to be part of this panel is to help those people that really need it. They were doing fabulous all along, and then this happened. Nobody saw it coming, and now they need to shut down their businesses. They can't pay for their leases, and they're in the edge of bankruptcy. So they definitely need the help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With those introductions, we're going to go straight into what you guys want, because this is not about us. This is about you guys. So Robert, can we go into your presentation and letting people know what it is that's going on, what these SBA loans are? And Kendrick, that'll go into the next slide, please.
Sure. So there's a lot of information to cover, folks. What we're going through right now. Let me give you a little context before I talk about anything. And most of you probably grasp this, but the SBA, it's unusual for the SBA to make a loan directly. We're in the business of guaranteeing loans to people like you, the business owners out there. They're starting, growing, or expanding. So the SBA normally will guarantee a loan for a small business owner so that the bank says, wow, the risk is all of a sudden gone because the government's going to pay 75% of whatever this entity does not pay me back if something goes wrong. So that's the normal base of operations for the SBA. Occasionally, there is a disaster, a hurricane, tornado, fire, snowstorm, whatever. And then if the governor of a state declares a disaster, then the SBA will make loans to the county involved, or in some cases, the entire state. What we're seeing now for the first time ever, all 50 states have been declared a disaster area for purposes of the SBA, meaning now the SBA has to ramp up and gear up towards making loans directly to the businesses that are applying for them. So this will flavor a lot what I have to say later on in the presentation or during our discussion, why a couple of things are really key for you in applying or waiting for your response, etc. I really want you to keep 4 things in mind today that are really important based on what's happened so far. And just, if you will, just number 1, apply. If you're hurting or you think you're going to be hurting or somewhere in between, apply. And we'll talk about what to apply to momentarily, but apply. Secondly, there's an old expression: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's an old proverb, and actually an African proverb. And what I'm getting across here is there are a number of organizations you can reach out to help you dig through this. My eloquence tonight will pale by morning light. What I mean by that is you're going to forget, you're going to maybe not quite catch the nuances. There are a number of resource partners within the SBA umbrella of resource partners that you can reach out to. And I highly recommend you call upon, number 1, the Small Business Development Center near you. Everybody's got one within phone call. Right now, most SBDCs, Small Business Development Centers, are doing business by phone or computer because of the obvious social distancing. So Google, you'll forget my name, you'll forget how devilishly handsome I am, but hopefully you'll remember SBDC or SCORE, like SCORE, football SCORE. SCORE is also an excellent resource. You can approach online and get an appointment by phone, email, whatever. They can help you navigate a number of things. And why I mention them, because there will be state programs by you rolled out to help you through this situation as well. There are city programs that are being rolled out right here in New York City for the same kind of reasons. And you'll need somebody to advise you on how best to sort of organize and sort of compartmentalize your need based on the different entities offering you help. So keep that in mind. And lastly, actually, one more thing, scams. There are a number of people out there being contacted by SBA.com, EIDL.com. There are people trying to sell you services for which you get for free. So choose wisely. If somebody offers to do your paperwork for you, and I heard this happen, for $2,000 to get you filed and see and help you all the way through to the end, it shouldn't have to be that way. If you want to spend $2,000 to somebody, it's up to you. I don't want to take anything away from entrepreneurs trying to make a buck, but there's no fees for what we're doing here. There's no fee for the loan. When we talk about the next loan after the EIDL, there's no fee for the PPP. So choose wisely. And lastly, because of the enormity of the task here, there's a lot of demand for what we do, a lot of demand for the services we're talking about tonight. You got to have a little bit of patience. And I'll explain exactly why in some areas. But first, you see the screen in front of you, applying for disaster loans. The first one that came across that was approved about 2 weeks ago, at least in New York, it was approved for the New York, I'm sure it's available throughout most of the country. That's the economic injury disaster loan. I put the New York district office up here. I wasn't sure exactly what my demographic was tonight, but there is a district office, the SBA, near you that has some kind of similar help or assistance line. The number you see below is the disaster loan customer service line. Write that down somewhere. You'll have the deck following the presentation tonight. That is being answered 24/7. It's also available in Spanish. So please, we're ramping up. We just expanded that 24/7. We just put a lot of people on board. So if you experience an operator helping you that maybe is not really on their game, doesn't sound quite right, they may not be, try again, but they will get better, and they're training. Have you ever heard the expression that you're trying to build an airplane as you're flying it? That's kind of what we're doing right now. We're on the ropes here trying to make this work. By law, the SBA has 14 days to implement what Congress passed. We're about 8 days into this process, so it's a work in progress. So bear with me. The EIDL, again, it's everything you need to know is online. SBA.gov. I'll include some websites here in a moment. You can get information on what you need, who can apply, how to apply. I'll touch on some salient points as we go through some of the specifics. But this is a great source for you if you have a number of issues. First of all, this is for self-employed individuals, independent contractors, sole proprietors and businesses, tribal business concerns, employee-owned businesses, some nonprofits. There's a little bit of debate, 501c3. I'm really pushing hard to get clarity on this, but it looks like 501c6s and C7s also. So, but you must have been in operation for that as of January 31st, 2020. So you bear that in mind. This is the only one of this type that is offered directly from the SBA. You will apply for this online at a website we'll show you momentarily. This is a term loan. So theoretically, you have 30 years to pay this off. So when you do the math, it's pretty affordable. Nobody wants to have a loan, but if you had to have one paying over 30 years, it's pretty sweet. The turnaround time for this, well, first of all, there is an advance component for this. So under the new, if you applied for this over a week ago, I'm telling you right now, you will have to reapply if you want the advance feature. If you've received an email, if you applied before last Friday or Friday and before, you should have received an email stating they have your application. If you applied after, let's say Monday or Sunday and beyond to present, and you applied, you probably haven't gotten notification yet. But when you applied, you were able to check a box saying, I want an advance. And the advance, in essence, is up to $10,000. And you'll have to, when you fill your form out, you'll have to certify that you're going to be using it for payroll-related expenses. But the utilization of the EIDL is largely for payroll expenses, fixed expenses, rent, some mortgage expenses, and expenses in general that you can't pay because of the issue of your revenue has dropped off the table. So keep that in mind as we move forward. There is it can be forgiven. You actually can, and there were a couple of questions along these lines. You can actually get the advance and not qualify for the bulk of the EIDL. So that's a possibility. If I were anybody listening tonight, even if you're saying, I wonder if I qualify, is my credit good enough? I'm left-handed but not right-handed, please apply. You can turn the money down. If you decide, I don't need it, I want this next one that I'm going to talk about, it makes more sense for me, at least apply for the EIDL. By the time this thing gets approved, it's going to be probably 3 weeks, maybe more down the road. And then if you are approved, it'll probably be another 5 days before the money gets dispersed. So you have time, and I think Romy will cover this also, but there is some interaction between this and the PPP component of the next phase, which I'll cover in a second. But I would recommend highly that you apply for this. It's probably the fastest infusion of capital you'll get related to this, but you must use the funds for the express purpose. Otherwise, it may not be forgiven. There's a forgivable component here that if you use the money for what it's expressly intended for, it could be a forgiven loan. Can I go to the next slide, please? So here are some key websites. Just get to sba.gov disaster. It's listed up there. It's really, for those who have gone on here before, let's say a week ago, you realized that a couple things. One, as I mentioned earlier, the website was slow, it was cranky. Uh, in some cases, it wasn't working at all. People were getting bounced out. You were submitting your documentation and applying at the same time. The process now is you go to the website, you apply. It takes a very short amount of time to apply, and off it goes. You probably will not get contacted that they have it for about maybe 4 to 5 days by email. And they will instruct at that point in time what documentation they want. Typically, you're going to need your most recent completed tax returns, an IRS document allowing them to confirm that the tax returns you submitted are in fact valid, personal financial statement, and a schedule of expenses that show what you spent last year. And the reason for all this is there's nowhere on that form where you're going to ask for, gee, I wish I had, $100,000. They're going to tell you, based on your documentation, what they think is your need for that period of time. So they're going to look at your numbers and they're going to tell you what you need. So it can go up to 2 million, for some of the big or small companies. That's what you're going to be looking at. So that's the website. A lot of questions I had earlier was, will I qualify? What do I need? It's all on there. And I've reviewed the site. It's been improved and it's pretty intuitive now. So everything you need should be on there for this loan, as well as the payroll paycheck protection program. Again, the customer service number is there. It should help you. And if you have a problem, contact, please, your local small business development center, SCORE, or your SBA district office. They should be able to get you some kind of help and clarity. And if you have a problem that I've never heard, like the people locally, I asked them, send me an email with if I can answer it. And I need that so I can forward it up the chain and maybe get help for that person, as well as a bunch more people behind that the same kind of problem. There's going to be some glitches. And I've heard almost every possible question. And there is some challenge. I was with a Congress member today on a teleconference with her district. Actually, I thought it was a district. It was the entire island. We had people from Montauk calling in. And they had some great questions that I had never heard until today. So we're forwarding that, and we will get help. I mean, she was on the lines, and she actually helped write the legislation. So the point is, there's help. If we go together, we'll get you help faster. If you heard the president, and more importantly, Jovita Carranza, our administrator, talking, the money that was approved does no good if it doesn't get to where it's needed most. Makes sense. Next slide, please. All right, this is a rather busy slide, but that's the website for going right to the PPP program, which goes into effect tomorrow. You can apply for this effectively tomorrow. If you are an independent contractor or you're a 1099, this particular program you will not be able to apply for. I mean, you could apply, but the specific program for you is going to be coming next week. This is pretty self-explanatory. Now, below, I mean, it's like if those who know, it's kind of similar to a 7A loan, and only SBA approved lenders will be making the loans. They're preferred lenders, or there are a number of lenders who are not yet preferred that can be authorized to make the same kind of a 7A loan. And if you're looking for a lender right now, maybe you don't have a good relationship with your bank, the website on the bottom there, paycheck protection /find, that is where you can find an approved lender by you. It goes by zip code, and it's evolving all the time. What's happening, as I mentioned, this thing is big, really big. So there probably are not enough lenders right now to handle the demand. So, I think it was quoted today, there are 35 million small businesses across the country. do the math. I mean, how many lenders do we need to have to accommodate? That's why I said, please apply early. Even if you're not sure, I don't know if I've only been in business since, like December, apply. You at least get your application in, and then what'll happen, the SBA, or in this case with the PPP, the lenders are making the loans. The SBA is not going to touch, like the SBA portal will not be processing your application whatsoever. It's going to be a bank. And even banks, let's face it, every bank, a lot of banks are closed. You're not going to walk into your local Chase or People's or even some of your credit unions. They're closed. They have special remote operations. So this is going to probably be handled the same way. So you want to check this website, find out who's close by, and approach them early. I'll tell you the honest truth. Right now, today, today, a lot of my clients were contacting banks, and the banks were saying, "Look, we're not ready. We don't know how we're handling this because it starts tomorrow." So even the banks are trying to figure out how do they best do it. What's the process? So have a little patience. Get a couple of choices from this website. Figure out your approach, and then establish a relationship. That's about all I'll say with that. And is there one more slide? All right, that's just my information. You feel free to contact our district office if you're in the New York area. If you're across the country, Miami or Ohio, I heard before, feel free to contact your local SBA office because again, they're probably remote also, so you'll be leaving a message or sending an email, and they'll be getting back to you. But that's pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to cover. I don't want to take much away from Romy, but I'm sticking around for a Q&A. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. There's a quote from a famous basketball coach who was around a long time ago. His name is John Wooten, and he had a quote that I love, and it went like this: I'm not where I'm going to be, and I'm not where I ought to be, but thank God Almighty, I'm not where I used to be. So we've had some hard times. There's a lot of rocky road ahead, but you know what? We're getting better, and we will weather this storm. So I'll turn it back over to you, Roxana. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Robert. Romy, if you could let us know how you're working on the legal side.
So a lot of times business owners are busy, building their business, helping their clients, doing all these things that we don't have those, payroll documents. We don't even know what our gross sales are. We don't know what our cost of goods is. And so when you're applying for this SBA loans and they start asking you to track your payroll, to track how much you pay for this and for that and your 401k, it can get really overwhelming. And I'm a business lawyer, and I'm familiar with these terms. And even for me, I'm like, really? So I have to read a couple of times. I have to figure it out. So what I'm doing is I'm helping business owners apply for this thing, whether it is I'm in Florida, so there's a Florida disaster loan specific for Florida residents, whether it is the SBA loan that you apply online, and now working with the lenders to do the PPP for them, the payroll protection, because it can get really overwhelming for a business owner when you tell them, do all this, get all this together so you can get some help, but then they don't really know how to do that. With the business bankers, I'm established relationship with them because a lot of them want to help, but like you said, they don't have the information right now, and there is information out there. And what I'm trying to do is kind of put them together with my clients so that they can help, because not every business banker is fitted for a particular client. Some have more experience with restaurants, some have more experience with realtors that I deal a lot with, some have more experience with people in the rental industry. So I'm trying to kind of see, okay, who can this lender work with? Some don't speak Spanish and my clients don't speak English, so I'm trying to help that out. I am also dealing a lot with leases. As a business owner, one of the most important contracts you have is your commercial lease. That's where you go and do your work. And now the government comes in and says, guess what? You need to shut down. Well, guess what? You still have to pay rent. So I'm helping business owners trying to see how they, through the use of different clauses within their leases, for example, force majeure or there's other, theories of law like frustration of purpose. I'm trying to come up with creative arguments so that we can send letters to their landlords and, asking for a rent abatement, meaning I cannot pay you the rent, trying to come up with some type of agreement where they pay their rent late with no fees, or they add an extra month to the lease, or they pay half with the deposit that they have, whatever we can come up with so that the landlord, agrees, and then the tenant can actually continue to rent that space and not be in default. Now, I understand that there is like a stay on evictions, right? The government said, no, they cannot file evictions right now. But the government didn't say your rent is forgiven during that period that you don't pay. So there's a lot of misconception out there, and small business call me, oh, I don't have to pay rent anymore, Romy, they cannot evict me. Yeah, not right now, but as soon as that's lifted, they will evict you, your credit will be ruined, and then what do you do? So I'm helping clients trying to deal with those type of issues with their leases, trying to understand what they can use these loans for, because it's easy to say, yeah, use it for your payroll, but then a lot of times they don't even know what their payroll is. I'm an independent contractor, what do I get paid? I work in the gig industry, I'm a freelancer, I work, I do Uber, what is my payroll, what are my expenses? So just trying to kind of put it all together for the particular industries, even lawyers. A lot of my colleagues are attorneys and they don't understand this. And there's a lot of misconception out there. So for them too, I'm just trying to put it all together so that I can help them get this money that they need so bad, and hopefully fast, because if it's gonna take, a month, by that time they're gonna be shut down, and then what good would the money do at that moment? We need it now.
Romy, what are some tips that for people to look out for when it comes to the legal matters of this situation? Because a lot of people are frantic and they're just like, I'm trying to apply right away. I want to apply right away. They're getting anxious about it. Everyone says, Robert, I don't know if this is true. Is it true that it's first come, first serve, or is it going to be based on the applications? How does that work, Robert? And then I'll take it back to you in terms of the legal things that they should be aware of. Hold on, Robert. I think we have to unmute you. Yeah. So Robert, what is it? Is it first come, first serve?
Well, technically, if you go into a lender, the first one on the door is going to be served first. But there's no formal process like number 10 is going to be served last. The way, for instance, with the EIDL program, when submissions come in from applicants, they're farmed out all over the country to contracted underwriters. So if 10 come in, all 10 go out at the same time. So from that regard, it's not first come, first served. Now to a lender, I'll tell you honestly, right now, what we're seeing, because this is new to a lot of lenders, some of the lenders that can process tomorrow, they're going to do their own clients first. It just makes sense. If I have a client who has a loan at my bank, and I want to make sure they remain viable with their business, because the loan will be paid off. Let's face it. So from that perspective, it is kind of like first come, first serve. That's hence, don't wait around. Don't beat around the bush. Just do it. You can mute me now.
So Romy, what are some tips that you have for people to look out for from the legal matters of things versus just applying and trying to get that application in? What are legal things that they should be aware of during this process?
One of the things, and I just saw a question about it, is understand that a lot of these programs are geared, at least the forgiveness part of it, to you keeping your employees. So if you fire them all and then apply, it's not going to be forgiven if you don't hire them back. And you have a certain window to hire them back, because the forgivable part of it is the payroll expenses that you use towards paying their payroll. So you need to keep your employees on board. You need to understand the forgivable part, which is also your lease expense. And what's the other part? The forgivable part is the lease expense, certain utilities. So it's not all that is forgiven. It's only what you use toward those allowed expenses. With regards to the legality of it, of course, try to apply as soon as possible, put your documents together, do not make false representations. But right now, the way that I saw the EIDL, if I'm saying it correctly, It's a very simple application online. You don't even need to have done your taxes for 2019, and you're able to submit it based on your gross sales. Don't wait till you file your taxes to submit it, because my understanding is there is a limited amount of funds everybody's applying. By the time you're like, okay, well, now I filed my taxes, let me go and do it because I don't know this number, it might be a little too late. So if you need to guesstimate your numbers because you haven't filed your taxes, look at your QuickBooks, talk to your accountant, do whatever you need to do, consult me, consult your accountant to get your application in. So that way later, if they ask you for proof, you can submit it, of course, do not lie, but you can rely on your internal records to answer those questions, the number parts, and then submit it for an application.
So that's an important question there for both of you. So when it comes to that, a lot of the things that people are misunderstanding was that this is only forgiven if they are managed to keep employees, right? So what if they're just doing it for operations cost, or they're individuals themselves that are just paying themselves? They are the employee, the single person, it's a sole proprietorship, or they just want to use it towards the expenses of keeping the lights on.
But that's still utilities. My understanding is whatever you pay yourself is your employment compensation, and that's your payroll. Whatever you use for utilities, that's an allowable expense. Whatever you use for the rent, that's also an allowed expense. So as an independent contractor, for those of my realtor friends out there and solo practitioners like attorneys, you may not be on your W-2 because you just don't, you give yourself a distribution. But there are ways to calculate that to be your employment compensation so that it is an allowable expense as long as it's under 100,000. So if you're making 200,000 a year, okay, fabulous for you, but they're only gonna, include up to the 100,000 a year in the calculations. Not that you're gonna get $100,000 forgiven. What you're forgiving is an average, I believe it's an 8-week, they make an average of your payroll, and then they'll forgive you up to 8 weeks of payroll expense, rent expense, and utilities. Is that correct, Robert? Okay. Yeah.
You're not on mute, I don't think.
The one extra thing is interest on mortgage too.
Oh, interest on mortgage. Okay, perfect. But not what you pay towards the mortgage, correct? Just the interest on the mortgage? Okay.
Correct.
But for the rent, is the whole rent, whatever you pay.
And it's also your gross pay. So your taxes, your workman's comp, et cetera. That's you take whatever your monthly comp is, and that's the number you go by.
Including your 401k, including your vacation pay, including whatever, even maternity pay, whatever other pay you get as far as your employment.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go segue now into the questions that we received. Some of the questions were already answered within the things that we mentioned, so I'll just bring them up briefly just to recognize them so everybody knows here that's chimed in. So the first question we have, does credit impact this? Does having bad credit impact them getting this loan? So people are saying no. With this, there's actually a video that was sent out, and we could share that afterwards as well, educating people on this. So what do you say, Robert, Romy? Do you know anything on this?
I don't think I think there are things that make you ineligible, right, Robert? Like, for example, if you haven't paid you're delinquent in your taxes, and that is the reason of your bad credit, then you're ineligible. You're delinquent on a previous SBA loan, and that is the reason of your bad credit, then you're ineligible. You didn't pay your child support, then guess what? That also makes you ineligible. And I'm not sure if I'm missing something else that makes you ineligible that may relate to bad credit, but is the reason of your bad credit that makes you ineligible.
What Romy says is 100% correct. But what was the first thing I said when I started my whole comment earlier? Apply. Just apply. This is the airplane. The airplane's being built as we're taking off. Things will be relaxed. And I'm not saying if you're delinquent on your child support, you should get a loan. I'm just saying you're preserving your business. You're preserving jobs for people, theoretically. So apply. But to be honest, if your credit score is really horrible, it's going to be a problem. I don't want to give you a number, but I'd say if you're you know, if you're like above 580, we're in the dance floor.
You get an invitation.
So the point is apply. Make them make the decision, and otherwise you'll never know. So.
Okay, perfect. We went over. I have another question. I'm self-employed. I do online sales. I do not have an LLC. Is that necessary for these loans? What are my options?
No, you can. If you're self-employed, sole prop, you have a pop-up.
99s.
Yeah. Again, but as Romy said, you have to be able to document, you know, what your sales were, what your expenses were, if you have employees, or if it's just you. Now that's the idle. If you want to look into the PPP, which is a big buzz today with the press conference in the White House, and tomorrow is effective for most businesses in that regard, and for the self-employed, the sole prop, and the 1099s, your window will open up next week. So definitely it's worth looking into.
Susan asked if you're not incorporated, is that acceptable? That means, Susan, you would have to have the 1099. So it's more about how you're processing yourself, correct? To be able to document your financials. So they're asking which loan is better. Is there a better loan over another when it comes to S Corp with yourself as the only employee? And you have mentioned the one that's coming up tomorrow, the EIDL. These are available for individuals with 1099 sole proprietors, correct?
The PPP opens up. Sorry for these acronyms. Everything's got to have an acronym.
Yeah.
But the paycheck protection program starts tomorrow for most businesses. The sole proprietor, the 1099 will probably be the next week. But all those people can apply under the EIDL, which has that $10,000 advance option, which is pretty fast cash injection. So it's worth considering.
Perfect. Awesome. The other question we have here is, how can owners of rental property secure the economic injury loan and advance if we have them under our own personal names?
I think it boils down to their compensation. How much have they been compensated? And then for the Payment Protection Act, they're going to calculate, you know, how much were you making in 12 months? What's the average? And then multiply the average of monthly times 2.5, and that's what you're able to get advanced if you are a sole proprietor, right? That's what they're saying. They own the properties as a sole proprietor in their own name.
As an individual, yeah.
Yeah, as an individual. So they're a sole proprietor.
Yep. And then you already answered the question about not filing taxes in 2019. The other question, will the economic injury $10,000 advance be forgiven if you actually get the loan approved?
Yes. If you're using that money for the express intent purpose, absolutely.
I think that's the key that we need to focus here, everyone, is what are you saying you need that for? And then being able to back it up at the end that you did use it for that specific thing.
The new process is you have to sign a affidavit or a certificate, I'm not sure what they're calling it. Basically, you're attesting that you will be using this funds for the express purpose. And you'll have to prove that you did at some point in time. It's not like I can buy a new pizza oven. It's got to be used for the reason of preserving jobs or hiring people back, payroll, comp, etc.
Yep. And then other people are asking if they were incorporated before the end of January, if they're still qualified. You've answered that already, that as long as it's before January 31st, they just have to be able to document things, right? And obviously they wouldn't qualify for as much, correct?
Right.
Okay, so is there a loan cap or no interest? Are there no interest loans? What are the qualifications? So is there a loan cap we'll stick to? The qualifications will be online.
The online version is the EIDL, and the max you could get for that, and again, you don't ask for this, it'll be determined by the SBA, is $2 million. Again, that'd be a pretty large company.
That's for the companies we have with the contractors and government contracts. Perfect.
Well, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But the interest rate for that is 3.75. If you're a nonprofit, I saw somebody ask before, what if I'm a 501c3? For nonprofit, the rate is 2.75 interest rate on that loan.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
in Florida, I wanted to clarify, Roxana, in Florida, we do have a 0% loan. It's called the Florida Disaster Loan,
Yes.
and gives you 0% for 1 year. After the 1 year, it turns to 12%. So they call it the bridge loan because what they want is for people in Florida to apply, get it fast, and then as soon as you get the SBA loan, you can use the SBA loan to pay off this other loan because the SBA loan is 3.5 or 4% for 30 up to 30 years, whereas this bridge loan is 0% for only for 1 year.
The next one is, will this become a grant?
Well, they use the term forgivable. So for both loans, there is a forgivable way out. Again, if you're using the money for the purpose we're talking about, it's almost all about keeping your employees on board or hiring them back within a certain amount of time and for a certain duration, depending on which program you're talking about. It becomes, in essence, a grant. Again, it's some people say, well, what's the big deal? I don't get to keep it. Well, no, the intent is not to put it in your pocket. The intent is to help the people who your employees are. So the point is, when the doors open up, people are allowed to go out again and use your facility, or you're allowed to do business once again. You're ready to rock. It's not like, let's call the people back in. It's designed to help you maintain your workforce primed, ready to go. So doors open, boom, business is moving.
So someone says here, I don't pay myself a salary. Do I count as an employee, AKA payroll?
Well, there has to be some documentation that you're retaining earnings for your own compensation. You may not call it that, but if you can document the money going to you, so the revenue is going somewhere. So I don't see how that's totally possible.
So what I see, so I've seen a lot of smaller business clients that they have the money coming in, but it's not enough to pay themselves. So it's just basically covering expenses and covering, the cost of doing business, but it's not enough to pay themselves a salary. But without the money coming in, they won't be able to continue doing what they do.
Well, for that person, I would definitely apply for the EIDL. Just apply for it, submit documentation. The PPP, I'm not sure they have enough data there to substantiate a loan.
Okay. Do real estate agents qualify for the loans? I think this goes back to that, yes, if you could prove that you have the documentation, that you have payroll, that you have the expenses, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. If I have multiple businesses, should I apply for all of them in one or individually? Individually.
If they are distinctly separate, you apply for, each one applies. If it's food service, hotels, they are waiving the affiliation clause. If it's NAICS Code 72, that may be agreed to a lot of people out there. But that's also being, in the past for 7A loans, like 7-Eleven couldn't get an SBA loan. But in this circumstance, when you have separate proprietors, they're waiving that restriction. So if you're not NAICS Code 72, don't worry about it. But I hope that helps.
Awesome. Is there any conflict with people that are applying for everything? So I already know people that as of last week applied for everything available and are lining up to apply for the other things coming up. Is there a conflict of interest with that? Is that going to impact their forgiveness level? Is that going to impact them getting the other ones that are better? Or is there a better one? Like, how do they prioritize?
Romy, you answered this very nicely on the questionnaire. Why don't you handle that one?
Sure. So I would advise people to apply for all of them. For example, if you apply for the EIDL, which you guys are calling EIDL, and you get that advance of $10,000, but then you also apply for the PPP, what's going to happen is whatever money you get for the PPP that should have been forgiven because you used it towards your payroll, it's going to be deducted, or it's going to be, you're going to have to take out the $10,000 that you got as a grant from the idle first. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply for it. It just means that they're going to give you that 10 grand, but they're not going to give it to you twice for the same purpose. So you're getting the 10 grand from the idle to cover your payroll. You're not going to get that forgiven from the PPP to also cover that same payroll. Now, the question that I have for Robert is, what if you apply for the idle, right? You get the advance of the 10 grand and you use it to cover 2 months of payroll, including rent and all that. But what if I then get the PPP to cover another period of my payroll? Would I then be able to get my $10,000 forgiven on the idle, and then on top of that, get my forgiveness on the PPP, since I am technically using it for payroll, but it's two different times of my payroll?
My understanding is yes, you can. And to even take it one step further, if you apply for the idle and you between January and March, between January and the end of March, if you got an idle, if that happened, then you can actually use the PPP proceeds to pay down the loan part, the unforgivable loan part of your idle. Because when you think about the PPP interest rate is 1%, and you be paying, it's like refinancing. The idle is 3.75%. I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but you can use both. But as Romy pointed out eloquently, they can't cover the same time frame, the same cost. That's a conflict.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So in terms of taxes, I have a few questions about taxes. Just to clarify again, as they had mentioned before, if you didn't do the 2019 taxes, you're okay, they mentioned. It's just your previous taxes or being able to come up with what your numbers are or your guesstimates, like Romy mentioned. The other questions I have, is anything available for community art galleries, for nonprofits? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, nonprofits do qualify. And this, again, apply. Just, I don't care, apply.
Okay.
But for the, as I mentioned, the idle, my understanding is 501c3s, C6s, C7s.
Okay.
And for the PPP, it's 501c3 and 501c19. Those are specified. There are some other types of nonprofits that are questionable. Today, the Secretary of the Treasury talked about even some, he was kind of fuzzy with this. That's why I say apply. He was mentioning houses of worship. Some of them could be qualified also. So he was very sketchy. So apply and let the underwriter figure it out.
Okay, I have someone that says, I own an auto body shop, which is deemed essential by MA. If I still keep a few technicians working during the 8 weeks, but not all the employees, will I be in jeopardy of not being granted forgiveness on the loan? Is the loan only forgiven for businesses that are completely shut down and not generating revenue? Or can he still be a functioning business? It's supposed to be about keeping them working, right? So they could still qualify.
Yeah, whether he keeps them working or the point is either keep them working or rehire as quickly as he can. And if as close as you get to your head count before the disaster, that's going to impact on the level of forgiveness you get. It's not all or nothing. You might not 100% or zero. It's some degree in between. So some people are not going to hire them all back. Some people will.
Okay. Are any of these CARE Act loans that need to be initiated via the SBA, or do we deal directly with our banks? That was something else that someone else asked in the chat. Like, how are they applying directly? I know you have the direct application online on the link that we're sharing, but is there another link that's more direct, or that's as direct as it gets? The lenders are just middle for folks.
No, the lenders are not going to play a role in the EIDL, the EIDL, the first phase we talked about. That's direct to the SBA. The SBA is making the decision. The SBA is granting and dispersing the advance if you qualify. The second phase we're experiencing right now, starting tomorrow, is the PPP, and that is through the bank. SBA is not going to touch it. They're going to be involved with it on the back end, but the banks are handling that. And the challenge we're all going to face is, can we find a lender actually processing it? It's going to be a slow startup.
Okay, awesome. So we have two people that are LLC owners without employees. Should they apply for these? I think we've already answered this. Just apply for it anyway, or should they go for unemployment? Or can they do both? Can they do everything? Just go for everything.
I would go for everything, but definitely apply, please.
Okay, awesome. So we're gonna go to the other series of questions that we had here. You already answered this. Do we have to rehire employees that have been laid off to get the loan forgiven? It's more about, it'll open you up. My understanding now is that the more people you have, the more you'll be able to get funded, right? Because they're going to decide how much you need based on what you have and what you're trying to keep for your business. Is that correct?
Well, they're going by head count. So if you had 10, and then you're not going to go hiring 25 people,
Yeah.
it's going by a baseline before this whole thing happened. And then
Okay.
if it's the same people, great, but they're going by head count, not names. So if you don't want to hire Johnny or Sally back, but if there are people you bring on board to replace, it's the head count that really shows you're compliant.
Yep. We had another S Corp question. We answered that. Is it applicable to real estate companies with all independent contractors? So how does it work with all independent contractors and no employees? That's the same as the self-employed 1099 folks, correct?
That's exactly right. You're not, a 1099 is not an employee, not a W-2, so you don't have a payroll for a 1099. It's up to the 1099 to apply for him or herself.
Are there any restrictions to laying off people in protected class, ADEA Act?
You cannot lay off people because they're a particular age. So if you're firing all of your 40 plus employees and then rehiring, so that you can get the forgiveness part of the loan, everybody that's under 40, you may get the loan forgiven, but you're also going to get a lawsuit for age discrimination. So you want to be able to comply. So you can fire people because they're not doing a good job. You just cannot fire people for a discriminatory reason. You cannot fire them because they're handicapped. You cannot fire them because they are older. You cannot fire them because of their sex, their origin, or their religion. So you need to be careful with that you may still be able to apply for the loan forgiveness, but you may be violating other laws and you may be subject to a lawsuit.
Yeah. And I think that's really important that even so now, if you were planning on laying someone off and you delayed that process for whatever reason, now you're stuck because they could use this as an excuse. There's just so much more. I think you have to tread so much lighter now because of it. So someone else is saying, in terms of the landlords, their tenants don't have extra income now. So they're encountering the issue of what can they do? Are they allowed to freeze the rents? Is there any information about that? Like, what is the process?
What can landlords do?
Yeah, like, are they going to get in trouble if they're not freezing rents? Are they supposed to freeze rents? Is that something that...
Right now, there's no mandate not to charge rent. You just simply cannot start an eviction process. And if your eviction process was pending, it's not going to go forward. So you cannot get them out, but there's no mandate that you stop charging them rent either. On the tenant side, if your lease has some type of force majeure clause that benefits you, or if you're able to make some creative arguments, you may be able to negotiate with the landlord not to charge you. But it's a negotiation. There is no mandate right now that I know where landlords cannot charge you rent.
And that's interesting because I actually had a conversation with some of my clients, and it was more about, because they really wanted to be able to help, but the truth is that they have to keep the lights on as well. They have to pay mortgages or they have to pay whatever bills there are. So I think the negotiation could be where the people that are the rent saying, hey, can I just reduce how much I'm paying to help you with costs, but to help me with the costs that I'm having. So that's just a tip for people on both sides. The other one says, if I'm an essential employee, can I force my staff to come back? So they have a company where it is all about essential employees. So do they force them to come back? Like, what's the situation with that?
You cannot force an employee to work for you if that employee feels that going to work for you may put them in imminent danger. You know, it has to, if the employee feels that they're going to work and, you know, they're going to be harmed imminently, whether it's death or some virus, here is the situation, then you cannot force them to come to work. You can let them go if they're no longer serving you a purpose, but I would be really careful, because now with the new Coronavirus Act, Families First Coronavirus Act, you cannot fire them if, for example, they cannot come to work because they have to take care of somebody that has coronavirus, if them themselves have coronavirus, if they need to take care of a child and they don't have appropriate child care, you cannot fire them for that either. So before it was easier to know when can you fire an employee, employment is at will. Now it's not so easy. It's very fact specific. So I would advise the person to get an attorney to go through the scenario, and then they can make the best decision knowing the legal implications of it.
So I had someone else that asked specifically, they said they're concerned on their side to make sure that they don't have any employees coming in with the virus. So is it okay for them to mandate that the employee take an exam? I found that kind of like a little on the line, because I know that hospitals aren't just giving exams unless there's certain requirements. So the mandating on the employee side. And then they also said that, you know, if they were diagnosed as positive, they didn't want them there. And then when they were coming back stating that they were doing well, they wanted proof of that. But how does that work to mandate as a company when we know that in reality, the hospitals and everybody else isn't really doing that?
You need to sit down and have established policies that apply to everybody in your business. You don't want to just say, you, because I think you're sick, I think this is what you need to do. You want to have a policy that applies for everybody, that's developed for this that's going on right now. Now, if somebody is, you think that they're ill or they look sick, you can ask them to be home. Of course, you cannot stop paying them because you need to continue to pay them, but you could ask them to remain home. And I think that you should, because now you're exposing your other employees to this sick person, and you need to be careful. In certain instances, you are allowed to take people's temperature as well. The testing part, it's really hard, even for federal employees, to get tested. And I have this from good sources. So can you tell somebody you cannot come back until you get tested? Might be a little iffy because there's no test to be done. But you can develop established policies that don't discriminate, that apply to everybody, and then in that way try to be in the, you know, the best case scenario, best side of the law, to protect your current employees and not discriminate against the one that you think might be sick.
So now in terms of the people that feel that this is imminent danger for them to go into work, and they stop going into work because of it, they can't get fired, but can they still get paid, or they're not expected to get paid if they're not showing up? Or like a lot of companies are saying you have to use your vacation days, and then after that, what happens when their vacation days and their sick days are over?
Well, right now, because of the coronavirus and the Family First Act, they need to get at least 2 weeks paid if they are under quarantine, or if they are under shelter at home order and they cannot go to work because they need to take care of their children. So they cannot get fired. They have to get that paid. And then if they're sick themselves, they can get up to 12 weeks. And I think if they're reducing how much you would get paid, it's not all of it, but you can get paid a portion of your current salary also by the employer, and they cannot let you go because they still have to keep on paying your salary. Now, how that's going to be enforced, it's for us to see, because if the employer doesn't have the money to pay, how are they going to pay you? I don't know. We would need to see how that's going to play out. There's also the new increase for unemployment. If you do end up getting fired, now you can get an extra $600 for the next 4 months per week on whatever state unemployment would give you. So if, for example, in Florida, we have one of the lowest unemployment rates, and I think it's $275 per week, regardless of how much you made. That's the maximum you would get. But now under this new stimulus package, you would get $275 plus the $600 for 4 months. It doesn't mean your unemployment is only 4 months. It's just that you can get that extra $600 for 4 months.
Okay, and I think that's really important for our small business owners to know in terms of what the options are for their employees, because they don't have the funding. So thank you so much for that, because that was several questions that I had from like my own client base in terms of what do I do? I can't pay them. Like, what am I obligated to do? So that's fantastic. So
Roxana, also under the unemployment, even if you don't fire them completely, but let's say you reduce their hours and reduce their pay, they may still be eligible to get a portion of the stuff that you reduce from the unemployment. And some of my clients are doing that. They're not firing their employees. They want to keep them. They just cannot afford a full-time salary. So they may be able to just pay them what they can, and then the rest, depending on how much they make, they can get from the unemployment.
Also, even though they're not unemployed, they could still go to unemployment. So back to Robert's thing is just apply for everything.
Just apply. Yeah, if you furlough them too, you can just do that too. Then you don't have to really fire them. You say you cannot work for me for the next 2 months, but for sure you'll come back after the second month. Then for those 2 months, they get unemployment.
So let your employees know, all of you small business owners, let them know, hey, I can't pay you much, but apparently just go apply for this. I'll apply for this on my side, you know,
and let's just work together.
You apply for yourself on that side. Let's just try to get as much money as we can to get each other covered. That's fantastic. It's all about the money here right now, guys. Okay, so the last question I have here that was submitted in advance, and then we'll go open to the bunch of questions we have on this side. So to obtain loan forgiveness or PPP loans, my God, sorry. My understanding is my employees need to remain on my payroll and paid their normal amount as though we were open. Is that correct? Others in our industry have either laid off their employees or furloughed them. What is the correct way to proceed without screwing my employees, but also not screwing myself?
Well, if you're closed and you're not doing business and you cannot afford to pay your employees, what are you going to do? So the point is, the PPP, once you apply and get it, you can rehire them back. So you're not forced to keep them on board. That's why there's been very lenient unemployment benefits across the country, subsidized by the federal government to allow. And part of the reason for the rather robust unemployment benefits is to keep people at home. They really, I mean, people. We don't want people like, I need money. I gotta earn a buck, and they're going out on the street trying to work somewhere. The reason why it's such a lush, if you call it that, I guess, unemployment benefit is the government wants you to stay off the street and let the curve flatten, if you will. But in this gentleman or lady's case, as long as you, with the PPP, as long as you rehire and get back to where you were as quickly as possible, that's the intent, the spirit of the plan.
So the thing is to rehire when they get the application, not before, to prove that they have the employees?
Yeah, that's fine. They're going by last year's census, last year's head count.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Can you clarify if the small business loan is the same as the EIDL?
Yeah, I know we throw a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms around, but when they talk about the small business loan, there's two as a result of the stimulus package. $2 trillion was rolled out by Congress, unprecedented. I mean, I can't even imagine what a trillion of anything looks like. You want to make me envision 2 trillion? So yeah, that's funding this program. The EIDL is the first wave. The second wave is this PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, and there will be more. There's going to be more legislation, depending on, and if the politics come to play here, but depending on how well we get this money out the door to the right people, as is measured by the transparency provisions, then most likely there'll be more money voted in. But that's the situation.
Perfect. I think that what I want to make clear to everyone is this is going to be one of the simplest ones, because it's like it doesn't ask like so many in-depth. You do have to back it up, but it's not like a gruesome application, correct?
No, it's probably the simplest loan process you'll ever see. EIDL got so much easier when they went to a simplistic website. It's just apply, get it in, they'll get back to you for what documentation. Don't worry about uploading the first time. And then this PPP, the only challenge is, and I'm getting emails as we speak, are the banks on board with this? So the biggest challenge will be which bank is accepting them.
Yeah.
But once you figure that out, it's going to be online with them, and it's going to be a fairly simple process and a quick turnaround time.
And to the point that you made earlier, making sure that you look to see if one of your banks is on the list, because they're going to take care of their clients first, right? So starting with the banks that you're on first. So you just answered the other question, which was about streamlined application. Do they have to send supporting documents within the application? But the answer is no to that, right?
Right now, no. The new form.
Okay. Have any advances gone out so far? I know some small businesses that applied Monday and have been the 3 days, and some people applied last week, actually. The rollouts have started yet?
I don't know any business that's received an advance. And that really would have started last Friday. So that would be mock speed. But I would imagine pretty soon businesses will be getting the first wave.
What if we're still being profitable? Would that impact the PPP loan? I think even if you're being profitable, the point is to avoid.
But you're not as profitable as you would have been. You still have had some economic injury.
Everyone. The whole point, just apply. What's the worst that's going to happen? You don't get it?
I don't want to seem cavalier and say, oh, just apply, see what happens. Because there are some people out there that are counting the beans, and they're trying to figure out exactly what they're going to get. And I appreciate that. The problem is with the EIDL especially, it's the SBA will decide what your anticipated need is going to be for this down period. And the more comprehensive and thorough you are, when they ask you for your documentation, have you payrolled out the best you can. If you haven't been in business for a full year, you can't give them a tax return. Have a P&L statement or something like it that might be prepared by your accountant, bookkeeper, whatever. If you make it easier for the underwriter to recognize, okay, you were making this much, you were in business for 3 months, you were making this much a month, and now you're not making that much. Well, it's pretty simple. You know, you have a gap there.
And we could share some score links that will show you on how to do a P&L that'll have the templates for that as well for you guys, if that helps with it. What else do we have here? Chase just sent notice to customers that they are not prepared to handle PPP loans there. Is there any info on what banks? Again, the link is provided there, so you guys will be able to see who it is that is available to do that as we go. Is there any precedent for the force majeure clause that allows rent reductions or rent abatements or break the lease? I think that may be over our heads here, but do any of you know?
There is precedent to get off of contracts due to force majeure. Now, if there is precedent to get off because of a pandemic, no, there isn't. But there is, because we've never had one like this anyway. But there is precedent to get off of contracts because of the force majeure. Now, every force majeure clause is not the same. So we have to read how it, what it says in your lease. And then surprisingly, there's a lot of leases that don't have them. But even then, we can still argue frustration of purpose, meaning the reason why you entered into this lease was, for example, to run a restaurant, and now your restaurant is shut down, or you're only able to do carry out. So, or if you're in a mall, it's actually shut down. So your purpose to renting the location is gone. And then we argue for a rent abatement or see what else we can get from the landlord.
Okay. Awesome. So it says if employers place freeze hours, employees can't receive unemployment. Is that correct?
Employees can receive unemployment if they're not getting a paycheck, whether you're like, I'm not going to hire you back for 2 months, or I reduced your hours. That means employees are not getting a paycheck. So they should, or they're not getting the same paycheck. The employee should apply for unemployment. Unemployment is an insurance that they have been paying all along. So they should apply and then deal with their particular state as to how much they can get and whether they're eligible or not. So I would say, like Robert says, just apply.
Okay, so it says, I already applied last week. Do I apply again with the new website form?
Yes.
If they want the advance, they should reapply.
Okay.
Because if you applied before last Friday, you didn't have an opportunity to say, I want an advance. So if that's a sort of a important part, reapply. Okay.
Awesome. So the EIDL can be used for which payment in case of a realtor?
It can be paid, well, it's for any fixed cost, payroll expenses, accounts payable, or any expenses that would ordinarily be paid, but you can't because there's a lack of business. So it's it's not necessarily all employee costs.
Perfect.
I want to mention one thing. I didn't mention deferments. The one thing about the EIDL, if you get an EIDL loan, then you don't have to, you have a deferment for 11 months. The first payment does not come until the 12th month. So they're giving you a chance to ramp back up and pay this thing down. And again, it's a 30-year term, so the payments should be relatively affordable. For the PPP, you have I believe it's a 6-month deferment. So again, you're not making any payments at all. The interest will be accruing in the background, but I just want to make that clear. The deferments are flowing. There's actually deferments being granted automatically for SBA loans like 504s and 7As. So if you have one of those, there's a deferment clause that's been approved for that as well. So
awesome.
Look into that.
So Yunil says, for the PPP, I give 1099s to my employees. Can I apply to keep paying them or rehire them back? They're subcontractors, not really employees.
If 1099, it doesn't jive. They're not W-2s.
They will have to apply on their own. What you could do to rock for them is just send them the information so they could apply individually, right? So what else? Okay. The interest rates we already went over. All right, guys. So that is all for now. Any other questions while I wrap it up here? I want to thank everyone so much. Romy, Robert, you guys are amazing. Follow us, follow me on social media, Latina Nomad, to look at the other Q&A sessions we're going to be having. We're going to try to get more amazing people, because the other thing you need is strategy. How are you guys going to get over this hump? How are you going to pivot your business to be able to deal with all this stuff that's happening? You're very welcome, Sabrina. You're welcome, Stephen. Just let us, follow us so that you're able to know and stay up to date with what we're doing. Romy, can you be furloughed retroactively, Romy? You're very welcome, our Apple. So glad you enjoyed it. You're welcome, Susan. So Romy, that question is for you.
Well, it depends when you pay them the payroll, because if you pay them March 31st, let's say, that already was processed, you already paid your state taxes and all that. Now, how are you going to go back and say, well, you know what, I paid you by mistake, you were really furloughed. I shouldn't have paid you. I don't know. I would have to do some research, talk to an accountant and see how we can, if it's even possible. I guess the reason why they want to do that is to qualify for unemployment. And at the same time, you have to be really truthful with unemployment and say, when is it that this person went on furlough? So I want to be really careful with that.
Awesome. Jimena, you're very welcome. I am so grateful to you guys. Let us know what you thought about this on the chat here as we wrap it up. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope this content was great for you. Again, my social media is, Kendrick is putting our social media platforms there for you guys. My website as well. Follow us. I'm more active on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram or any other platform. We will be doing a lot more because we want to make sure you guys survive and thrive. We will try very informative information from Helen. Thank you so much. So if there's anything that you need in terms of Q&A sessions that you will have more like this to have these one-on-ones, feel free to let us know what topics you want to talk about. Shoot me a message on email or on social media again, where I'm most active. So again, thank you so much, guys. Any last words, Robert and Romy, before we wrap up here?
One tip, and this is totally outside of the loan process.
Mm-hmm.
Roxanne, you're an ace when it comes to social media. I'm going to put out to every single business owner out there, now's the time to engage with your clients and your potential clients. You don't have to tell people how messed up things are for you, but just an email. If you have social media, ramp it up. Offer some post of value to people. I tell you what, if you're staying in contact with these people throughout this disaster,
yes,
when the doors open back up again, they're going to come rocking back to you. Don't be sticking your head in the sand. But the best practices I've seen so far during this downturn are the people who act like, yeah, it's tough, but here's some things I'm doing, and here's what you can expect from me during this downtime and when we open our doors. Stay in contact with your clients. in the
Yeah,
future.
take a screenshot of this right here so that you could show like, hey, I just learned more about this to be able to help keep our business going. Brag about what you're doing. Let them know that whether you're looking for information or doing certain things, that you're staying active to be relevant to the business and to be able to like continue doing business with them in other ways. Add information to them, give them resources, just look out for them, just check in. How are they doing? What are they doing? Romy, any last words from you?
I just want to tell the small business owners, the people that are feeling overwhelmed, that listen, it's hard, but we're gonna get through it. You've gotten through so many other things when you started your business from scratch, that this is something that nobody saw coming. Everybody's in the same boat. Let's not let it drown us. Let's find solutions. Thank God the government is putting this out. This is not going to be the only thing that they're going to do to help us. And let's just be creative. Like Robert says, apply. The worst they can do is say no, but you still get the $10,000 advance, even if they deny you the loan. You don't have to pay it back as long as you use it for, payroll expense and all that. So there you go. And let's just, be positive and together, all, negotiating with your landlords, your tenant, see what we can get accomplished so that we can get through this horrible phase into a new phase and grow our business.
Yes, and that will segue into me finalizing with telling you guys that things will not be the same post this experience. Our normal is going to be very different because there's so much happening right now. There's a lot of catastrophes happening as a domino effect, but our new normal could be whatever we want it to be once we adjust to it. So let's just be very strategic about it. Let's make sure that you're making plans into how your business is going to pivot, what you're going to do. But most importantly, don't do it alone. Start partnering with people. Everyone's collaborate. I've always collaborated my entire career, hence why I have these two amazing people here. I've never done anything alone in my life. So if you're doing it alone, it's time for you to stop doing it alone. Start looking for people that you could collaborate with, that you could partner with, so that you can make that pivot to start adding value to people in a different way. Because services as we knew it are now not going to be the same. It has to be completely different so we're able to accommodate the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. All right, guys. So with that said, thank you so much. I am a huge Star Wars fan, so I will end with May the Force be with you all. All right, guys. Have a great evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.
Ciao.